We're going to have a few instances during the forum where we want to invite people who are leaders, who are great thinkers, to come and share their perspective about the Great Lakes. And so we're going to do that first segment of that kind right now. We've asked a number of individuals to share their perspectives on the Great Lakes, including the important perspectives, I'd say even more than important perspectives, of tribes, First Nations, and Métis people. I'd like to welcome back Chief LaForme, Chief of the Mississauga of New Credit First Nation, to share his perspective on the importance of the Great Lakes. Welcome back.
Thank you. I thought I was here to give the test from this morning about all the statistics. No? Okay. So, does everybody like the shirt? Come on. See, I learned if they don't like the speech, they should have something nice to take away. Actually, this shirt actually has meaning. See, within my culture, the flowers and stuff actually represent Mother Earth in her youth. So when I wear stuff like this, it's to say that I remember you in your youth, I remember you in your beauty, I remember you when times were at the beginning. So it's not just because I like to be flashy, it's because it's important to our culture. So I'll do a little bit of the introduction again. I'll skip the prayer that I did this morning, but I will do a little introduction on myself. Ani Boju, Nagani, Anishinabeki Nini, Stacey LaForme, Mississaugas, New Credit Dunjiba, Mainga Dodam, Mississauga, Anishinaabe Dowell. My First Nations name, my name is Nagani Anishinabeki Nini, which means it can translate to leader of people, but it translates to leads people man. I think that's way cooler, so I stick with that one. So I'd like to thank again the Creator and acknowledge the world in which we live. I'd like to acknowledge our ancestors. I would like to acknowledge Mother Earth and her life-giving, life-maintaining waters that she shares with us. I would further acknowledge my Indigenous brothers and sisters here today and my non-Indigenous brothers and sisters who are here. Now, I have written and given many presentations, so many, head swirls, since I became chief, and prior to that as a counselor, and also I'm a storyteller and a poet. And normally how I do this is I do it a day or two before each event because that's how my calendar is. So here's the event where you're speaking. The night before at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock you write the speech, and that's how it goes, whether it's 5 minutes or 2 hours. But with this one I had a real difficult time coming up with how to put it together and how to phrase it. And I guess that's a bit because it's really not my role to speak on it. I mean, I will, but in our culture, in our creation story, Mother Earth was the first delineation of gender. And so in our culture, and although we forget it, a woman is always supposed to come first in all things. And really it is the role of the women in our culture to look after the waters, to have the obligation and the honor to deal with the waters. It's a man's job or duty to assist her if she lets him. But that's about right, I think. So I'm going to talk a little bit about water, but I'm going to talk a little broader, and maybe I'll get away from the point a bit. But if I do, feel free to boo. I don't mind. I'll just pretend we're dating. So I should tell you a little bit about my people. The Mississauga Nation is comprised of 6 different communities, including the Mississaugas of New Credit. Our 5 sister communities are Hiawatha, Curve Lake, Alderville, Scugog, and Mississauga 8. Each has its own traditional land areas outside the land of the Mississaugas of New Credit, with a total Mississauga membership of approximately, well, I've been telling people 10,000, but I've been told it's more like 8,500. But I've been expect a cold winter and a lot from my people. So here's a mouthful for you. We are the Mississauga of the Credit, of the Mississauga, of the Ojibwe, of the Anishinaabe people. That's who we are. And the Anishinaabe people are the largest linguistic speaking people in Ontario, and I don't know about Canada, but I'm willing to guess yes. Somebody could fact check that if they want. The traditional territory of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation spans 3.9 million plus acres of southern Ontario, including where we stand today. It stretches, and this is from a quote from our chief, Reverend Peter Jones, who became a reverend. It stretches from the River Rouge towards the dividing ridge between Lake Huron and Lake Ontario, to the headwaters of the River Thames, and southerly to present-day Port Stanley, from Port Stanley to Long Point and the northern shores of Lake Erie, and finally down Niagara River and Lake Ontario to the place of beginning. Normally I don't subject people to that. I usually just said it's past Toronto, down near to London, and out to Niagara Falls. Now our history and title to our land is well documented, so thank you for all those descendants of the European for documenting our history so well, because we've used that documentation to settle 3 land claims, specific claims I should say, within our territory. One was a railway claim of 1984. There was another 200-acre land claim of 1997, and the most infamous, of course, is the Toronto Purchase claim that was finalized in the year of 2010 after 12 years of negotiation. That specific topic could be a day-long discussion. If you ever want to have it with me, we can sit down and talk about the whole process and how it played out. So we have a strong connection to our history, our culture, and our language. We believe that within our traditional lands, we have a responsibility to the lands, the waters, and the people who live and play on those lands and waters. Over the years, we have lost touch with that obligation because of colonization, industrialization, population growth, and many of the attempts to assimilate or eradicate our people. However, we have not forgotten, and we are now more than ever ready to take our responsibility and become a central player in the stewardship of our lands and waters, and assist the people who live within our lands, for that is part of our responsibility. Sooner or later, the damage sustained by this planet will become irreversible. On that day you will not notice, for your life of comfort will continue, but the life of your children will change. They will face a world in chaos, a world where water is fought over, a world that cannot support the population, a world they did not create, a world inherited from you and I, a world they do not deserve, a place where the future is not promised. So when you see Indigenous people stand to defend the land and water, don't always question why they do it. They believe they do it for all of us, for the future of the human race. Don't ask why they are standing up to something they do not believe in, something they think they have to stand against in defense of the lands and waters. Instead ask, why are they standing alone? I believe in relationship building and finding resolutions. That's why I'm glad to attend here today. However, I understand the perspective of people when they get to a certain point in their lives where they see their opportunities are limited and the path to negotiation blocked. So I can understand that perspective. Now, I want to talk about climate change because, as we know, everything is all related and interconnected. So I'll talk a little bit, if I could, about the gathering in Paris. Although laudable, falls far short of what is required to make an immediate and viable impact on climate change. World leaders must be honest with the people of their countries. This is not the solution to climate change. This is but a beginning, a chance. If the people are not told this fact, they will assume that governments of the world can save them, and they will become complacent and accepting of the conditions of the environment. And at this point in our history, no one can afford to be complacent. I would like to believe that our governments and our scientists can save us and I can go back and do my living, but that's just not going to happen. Leadership across this world must understand that to leave a future for the children, it is not enough to enact change in policies or change the regulations, even if these changes lessen the impact we have on the environment. To truly affect substantive change, enduring change, it has to begin with a recognition of the universe around us and our place within it. It's not enough to make change because we stand on the brink of ecological disaster. People may plan and become euphoric about their envisioned change, but if that change is still based on learned processes of societal norms, it will fail. Leaders have to stop seeing with their eyes and feel with their hearts. Recognize the spiritual connection of all things. Embrace that recognition, even if it's buried under layers and layers of so-called civilization. It is the simplest and at the same time most complex undertaking they will ever face. However, the results could change the direction of civilization for all the nations on this planet. I am unsure if leadership will succeed, for there will be daily pressure exerted upon them, internally and externally. However, there really is no alternative. My people have a prophecy called the Eighth Fire, where the world will decide to travel down one of two paths, one of spiritualism or one of materialism. On one path is a life lived in harmony and peace. Down the other path is a life based on, based on greed and personal wealth, where we continue to exploit the world around us. But there is a choice. And my people believe that the indigenous people of these lands have an important role to play within that coming choice. See, the way forward requires indigenous knowledge holders to be part of the solution. The world must embrace the value of the indigenous people. Let's sit, talk, listen, and find a way forward. To work with the gifts that were given to you, to combine them with ours, and pick the proper path for our people. It is time the world take the hands of the indigenous people and learns to respect and value the traditions and knowledge they carry, the connections to the world around them. We all need to understand our place on the earth and rediscover that connection that we all have with the planet, for that is our path forward. Now, I can tell there are a lot of visionaries in the room, so I'll ask you a question, but don't answer it. What do you want out of life? Not what do you do for a living, or how much money do you want to make, or how pretty will your wife or husband be, or how many kids will you have? But what do you want out of life? Who do you want to be? I want to be loved and respected and live my life in a good way. Well, how do I accomplish that? By being honest, speaking the truth, being kind, being respectful, using courage and wisdom in my life. I have been guilty many times of living my life not in accordance with the above, but that's not the point. We're not perfect and we'll never be perfect. The point is I remember who I want to be and how I want to live my life, and it is never too late to follow and find my true self. As an individual, you should take note of who you want to be, who you aspire to be, how you want to walk through your time on Mother Earth, and base your life and values on that powerful aspiration. Of course, your decisions will be based on the reality of what surrounds you, your everyday circumstance. But you should always consider your aspirational vision in what you do, so you know why you do what you do, to determine if you are walking in the direction of your real choice. For that vision is the real you, and when we lose our way, it is because we fail to remember who we are. As a nation, we should follow the same methodology. Who were we, who are we, and who do we want to be? Yes, of course, decisions will be made on the realities of the day. But without that overall vision, that overall direction, you will only think of your immediate need, wants, and the impacts on you now. And that doesn't necessarily build a future of which we can be proud. For that vision is your real nation, your real people. And when we become lost, it is because we have forgotten our path to that vision. Now, some will say, and I probably was one of them, they have no time for this as they are too busy building a life, providing for a future. But I ask, for what? For when? Your time is limited on this planet. It is more logical to live a way of life that supports the continuation of your beliefs, a world of substance, a place for the future of our children. As a country, we must do the same. As a world, who do we want to be? I ask you this question because all things are connected, and all our perspective translates to the impacts on the world around us. So, finally, he's going to talk a little bit about water. So changes to the environment and changes to watersheds affect First Nation treaty rights. First Nations have an inherent right to be part of the decision-making process that affects our lands and our waters. When people think of Indigenous rights, they often immediately think of the land. And it is true that our lives were disrupted by the loss of land and forced relocation. But we also have an inherent right to be stewards of the waters that run through our traditional territories. For the waters have sustained our people since time immemorial. Now, for those who are not aware, I just want to touch on a couple points from the perspective of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, who are descendants of the River Credit people and part of the Anishinaabe group. When we were along the river, what's known as the Credit River now, or the River Credit, we used to trade with the Europeans and probably some of the French, and we became known as the Good Credit Indians because if somebody couldn't pay their bills, they would get things on credit, and somebody couldn't pay their bills, everybody thought it was a slight on them, so they would always pay it off, and then, so, gee, I would have did well back. No, just kidding. So it became known as the Good Credit Indians, and it got to be known as the Credit River because of that. And so when we moved to after we got pushed out of Toronto by the large number of settlers, we moved to another location, and we took the name the New Credit Indian, or New Credit First Nation. So water has always played an integral role in the culture of the Mississauga for countless generations. The Mississauga regard water as the lifeblood of Mother Earth and recognize its life-sustaining properties. Water is revered as a spiritual being that must be accorded respect and dignity. Numerous Anishinaabe ceremonies, stories, and songs reflect the centrality of water in their worldview. Water was vital to the survival of Mississauga, as sustenance was derived from it: fish, wild rice, and other aquatic flora and fauna. So we also used the rivers and the bodies of water to transport ourselves here and there within our lands. I'm going to gloss over some of this stuff because I don't know how long I'm taking now. So we remain committed to utilizing, protecting, and treating waters in a holistic way that promotes contained sustainability. Our Department of Consultation and Accommodation engages proponents on the development of projects in our traditional territory that adhere to principles of wise stewardship and conservation. You know, when I write these things, I should consider that I have to say them. So it is with this in mind that we continue to strive for the protection of water in our traditional territory. We are grateful to have like-minded people like you sitting in this room. When it comes to preserving this incredible, valuable natural resource. But keep in mind as we talk of, and it was brought up earlier, First Nations in Canada lack access to safe water. All things are connected. Now, there was a time not too long ago when people, generally public, didn't know that First Nations in the North were suffering through such atrocities and things in their lives in difficult times. But they become educated and they learned about them. And then they become educated and they learned about water shortages. But it might surprise you to know that New Credit in the South, you know, relatively advanced in certain areas and lacking in others, do not have full water within their First Nation. We're missing 3 roads that don't have water. We currently get water from one of the lakes, and it flows from the region into our property. But we still do not have water. So it's not just people up north and people who are out of our sight that have no water. It's actually your neighbors and this is Canada. So it's a good perspective to remember. Okay, now for an interesting factum. So the Mississauga Credit have recently filed an Aboriginal title claim to the waters within our traditional and treaty lands. Claim to title to waters, watersheds, floodplains. We want to ensure this precious resource will continue to be here in abundance so that it can sustain life for all the children now and in the future, including groundwater sources. We are structuring and preparing to make an impact in regards to water and policies. We are looking for a negotiated resolution with Canada, one of equality that speaks to stewardship, protection, life, and longevity. We would never attempt to exclude anyone from the process, for we know we need everybody's help. But we will not sit idle, not sit by, and allow you to go forward without our involvement, without Indigenous involvement. For the future is too important to all of us. We must bridge gaps and find our path, our vision. I encourage you to get a copy of the claim because I and my nation think it's a fantastic document, worthy of a quiet, candlelit read as you enjoy a glass of wine and maybe a bubble bath. Not too much water, though. So, I want to wish you a great day, have a great conference, celebrate the life of the Great Lakes and Mother Earth. Keep them in your mind and in your hearts. We humans have set ourselves as the most important thing, when in truth we are but a part of the overall ecological system. No more entitled than the birds overhead or the creatures who crawl through the earth or swim in the waters. You and I alone will fail, but all of us together can save mountains, save rivers, streams, lakes, the earth. Now, I'm going to wrap up in a second, so I wrote a poem called Sacred Trust, and it's from my people's perspective, but I think it should be a perspective from all of us and all peoples. I actually believe that when people are new citizens to Canada, that when they do their pledge and their allegiance, that they should incorporate specifics to protect the earth, to protect the environment, the water, as part of when they come to this land. So Canada can say, to become one of us, you have to know that your job is to look after these lands and these waters. So the poem is called Sacred Trust. We are the keepers of these lands. She shelters and sustains us. Long after the flesh fails the spirit, we will care for these lands. Our drums will be heard upon the winds, our voices in the rustle of the leaves. My people have a sacred trust for the land, a trust no man may break, a trust that death cannot sever. We were here when you first stepped foot upon these lands, and here will we remain long after the last step has disturbed our soil. So that's from the perspective of my people, but I think it should be from the perspective of all of us. Now I'll end by saying, remember they are called the Great Lakes. Not the lakes, not the good lakes, the Great Lakes. And that is what they must be and what they must remain. If you find yourself forgetting, remember, you are water. Now, I encourage you to think of all the things as being interconnected. That everything touches on something else when we look at everything we do. So, thank you for letting me bore you, and Shimagwich.